Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Uday Bhaskar. At a time when the military tension along the line of control is on the increase, we look at the internal power dynamic in Pakistan and its army in particular. In most countries, the news about a new army chief would be deemed routine. But Pakistan is different and distinctive. Since its birth in August 1947, Pakistan has been under military rule for more than half its existence, and the better known army rulers include Field Marshal Ayub Khan and Generals Yahya Khan, Zia-ul Haq and Parvez Musharraf most recently. Rawalpindi, the army GHQ, has emerged as an autonomous power center in Pakistan since the Ayub Khan era in the early 1950s. Post 1971, after the birth of Bangladesh, GHQ Rawalpindi seized control of Pakistan's policies towards India that include Kashmir, support to terror groups and nuclear weapons. Pakistan's current army chief, General Rahil Sharif, is set to retire on November 29th. And this will be the first time in 20 years that a Pakistani chief of army staff is retiring as per his tenure. There has been considerable speculation in Pakistan about which Sharif will prevail. And as of now, it appears that Prime Minister Mr. Nawaz Sharif has been able to ensure a transition to a new army chief. Who will be the new incumbent, the 16th Pakistani army chief, and what does it mean for India? As always, we have an eminent panel. Allow me to introduce our guests. Mr. Rana Banerji, former Special Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. Dr. Ashok Behuria, a senior researcher at the Institute for Defence Studies and Analyses. And Lieutenant General Prakash Katoch, former DG, Information Systems in Army Headquarters. All of them are Pakistan watchers of, I would say, distinction in their own way. Mr. Banerji, if I could request you first, you've been looking at Pakistan for many years, you've written a monograph on the Pakistan Army. What is your assessment of General Rahil Sharif completing his tenure as per the book, and who is likely to be the new chief?
Well, Rahil had announced in January itself that he would be retiring on time, and it is now emerging, despite all the speculation to the contrary, that he would be fading away on time. If you take out the two first British chiefs of the Pakistan Army, then out of the 15 who have been army chiefs in Pakistan, only 6 have had normal tenures of 3 years or less. And Rahil will now be the 7th. So it's a formidable achievement that the army chief is phasing out on time.
A formidable achievement for the civilian dispensation or for Pakistan?
Yes, the transitory dispensation of Pakistani democracy, if I may put it that way. So, as regards who will be the next chief, in the present cohort of the senior most generals, we have Lieutenant General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, Lieutenant General Ishfaq Nadeem, and 3 or 4 others, some of whom have not done corps commands. So that would disqualify them. There are some political connections which have been talked about in the media, but the present weakened position of Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister following the Panama Papers inquiry now in the Supreme Court, and also the Army's concern or anger about the leak which appeared in the Dawn about they are not doing enough on the terrorism front. Nawaz, he's quite weak, and he would be well advised to accept the recommendation
made by the outgoing chief.
And by all accounts, it would perhaps be between either Zubair or Ishfaq Nadeem, one of whom could be elevated to the other 4-star vacant slot, which is also coming up, that of the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff.
But Dr. Behuria, if I could request you to pick up the thread from here, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif also has the distinction of having appointed 5 army chiefs. This will perhaps be the 6th. You recall, he was able to encourage General Karamat in his time to step down. And then, of course, we had this very, from his perspective, less than favorable sequence of events. What is your reading currently of Prime Minister Sharif's, shall we say, credibility as being in the chair in Islamabad?
I think the popularity has declined. The army he has conceded space to the Pakistan army, and Rahil Sharif is more popular by all means. But he is the one who is going to take the decision this time, and the system has worked in that way. So he, I think, has the power now to decide who will be the next army chief. As I was coming here, I noticed the Dunia television has come out with a report that the farewell dinner is being given to him today in the evening. So that means he's on his way out, and the Prime Minister will discuss with Rahil. That is the report. That is what the report says, and decide about who to pick from the four five names that are doing the rounds. I will add to the names given by Mr. Banerji. The two others are Javed Iqbal Ramde and Qamar Ahmed Bajwa. So these four names are doing the rounds, and we have to wait and watch as to know who he is going to pick. If I go by the Urdu newspapers in Pakistan, they are saying Isfaq Nadim will be the next army chief. He has served in conflict theatres, and he, as DGMO, had planned this Operation Jarbe-Azam. So he has all the credentials.
But I'm sure that announcement will be made very soon. But General Katoch, if I could turn to you, the current tension along the LOC and the kind of, shall we say, reports that have come, there's a lot of anger and anguish in India. Now, there is one view which seems to think that perhaps this is being quote-unquote orchestrated by the Rahil Sharif constituency so that he goes out in whatever, I don't think glory is the best word to use, but definitely not to be seen as cowed down by India after the surgical strike. How do you read the current tension on the LOC?
I think we have to look at one more factor, and that is the China factor. That after the Chinese have made a strategic lodgement in Gilgit-Baltistan, and the CPEC is coming in, the tension on both sides of Pakistani border has increased. In fact, this morning on a Hindi channel, the BSF was showing a diary in Chinese caught over, which has been taken from a dead militant. Now, there is already been some intelligence inputs that about 400 Uyghurs are being trained by the Lashkar-e-Taiba on behest of the Chinese. So now you have to look at actually the nexus of China-Pakistan as to what is happening in Kashmir. You've already found Chinese flags being caught in Kashmir. You had PLA at the LOC, at the Pakistani post showing up. So it is a nexus, and their designs on Kashmir are coalescing.
So can I just interrupt you briefly, Prakash? This is a very significant development if it is now being suggested that more than China's anxiety about terrorism entering Xinjiang, we now have Chinese nationals who are being trained by the Lashkar and affiliates in Pakistan against India.
Absolutely. This is not new. In fact, the social media has been showing Uyghurs trained in Pakistan which are fighting in Syria along with the side of the government. So if we've had Afghan terrorists fighting in Kashmir, why not Uyghur terrorists? And in fact, they can be used both sides of the border.
So that's the new dimension that you
That's
see.
a new dimension which has come in. Right. As far as the next army chief is concerned, firstly, there are two positions getting vacant simultaneously. It is the chairman of the Joint Staff Committee as well as the army chief. I would say that today the army chief is the most powerful man in Pakistan. And in fact, if Rahil Sharif is going home, it is of his own volition. And as far as the next army chief is concerned, even if you take the name of case of Rahil Sharif, there was adequate talk within Pakistan that he was the selectee of Musharraf. So even the next army chief, it depends what the army wants to propose. But the way things are, possibly Nawaz Sharif will go by seniority, and one will become the chairman and joint staff committee,
and the other
will be the army chief.
But as I said, this announcement I'm sure will be made soon. But Rana, if I could come to you, we often, in India have said that it is Rawalpindi that is determining the policies towards India, and that there is a kind of a consensus amongst the senior corps commanders and perhaps their peers in the agencies about how they want to deal with India. So this is the crucial question. Now we have this increasing tension across the line of control, and 120 mm mortar is also being exchanged. Both sides have, I think, increased the ordnance levels. Is it possible that a new dispensation selected by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif would have a different approach to India?
No, I would rule that out, because whoever becomes the chief will be chief in his own right, and he would be guided primarily by the consensus of the senior army generals. But I would like to qualify some of the ideas which General Katoch has mentioned just now. I find it very difficult to accept that China would allow training of Uyghurs by the LET and their activation against us at Chinese behest. Uyghurs may be getting trained by the LET inadvertently or deliberately, but the Chinese would look askance at such training or at such connections, because they remain very concerned about Xinjiang. And they have in the past come down hard on the Pakistani ISI for allowing these type of connections to develop. And I don't think Afghans have come into Kashmir at the Pakistani behest for a very long time. Mustbul is more than, almost 20 years back. So I don't think this will happen, but the overall thrust of Pakistan's anti-India profile and policies would not be appreciably altered by whoever comes in as the new chief.
Ashok, if I could now request you to pick up the thread, as Mr. Banerji Rana has just said, there is this institutional view in Rawalpindi that they do not want any kind of rapprochement or improvement as far as the bilateral relationship is concerned. Now we are aware that civilian leaders in Pakistan, whether it is President Zardari or Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the past, have indicated that they would like to prioritize trade, etc., while ensuring that issues like Kashmir are kept on the radar, as it were, but they want to move in other tracks. With the new dispensation, you have a Prime Minister in Nawaz Sharif who, to use Rana's words, is relatively weakened. What is the kind of possibility that you see now as far as the next year or two are concerned?
I will give you a sense of how the Pakistani media is also looking at this transition. They are saying that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif may pick up somebody who will be open to the idea of change of relationship with India, and in that context they are picking up Mr. Bajwa, Lieutenant General Bajwa, who had perhaps gone to media saying that terrorism is more is more of a threat to us than India. So this is being featured in the Pakistani media in a big way. But I have my doubts. The way the events have taken place one after another since last about 1 year, the India-Pakistan relationship has moved in a direction where I find Nawaz Sharif losing his initiative about India and conceding space to the army. And whosoever becomes the army chief at the moment, even if he is Mr. Bajwa, I would infer the institutional reflex will take over. He may take time to assort himself, but this is something that will definitely be coming back.
Let me pick up that phrase, institutional reflex of Rawalpindi. Prakash, how do you see the army and Rawalpindi, their orientation? Is it going to be inflexibly anti-India, or is there any space that we need to be looking at? For instance, support to terror. After all, we have had a relatively peaceful period after, if you remember, Parakram, when Prime Minister Vajpayee was at the helm in India. So how do you read the opening with the Pakistani military?
The way I look at it, the Pakistani military is in no mood of carrying out any rapprochement. In fact, it may get harder. Look at what has happened to the run-up to the Heart of Asia summit in Amritsar, which is going to happen in first week December. How did the talks break off in 2013? There was this serious incident of beheading. So they already done it again. And in fact, in 2013 also, when this beheading occurred, our intelligence had brought out, there was a chap called Anwar Khan, who had been recruited by the ISI, paid 5 lakh rupees. And subsequently, the Pakistani media brought out that he was publicly welcomed by Musharraf and also given 1 lakh of rupees. Now, they've already gone in for 2 beheadings in the recent past. Now you come up with this new high-powered committee to look at doable and a sustainable Kashmir policy. But you look at the constitution of that committee. It is the military, it is the ISI, it is the IB, it is the Information Ministry, it is the Ministry of Interior, and it's the Defense Ministry. The foreign ministry doesn't even
have any
as part of it. So who is controlling the policy against India? It is the military which is controlling it. And military, as we see, is in no mood to make things better. And the only reason is that they want conflict with both India and Pakistan and Afghanistan is because of the money and the power. And this was brought out by Aisha Siddiqa in a book, Military Inc.
Yeah.
Published in 2007. In fact, she was there in the Herat Security Dialogue just last month, and the same thing was being discussed there. So the military is not going to do any sort of change in heart, whoever becomes the next chief.
Mr. Banerji, with your experience, now whenever we meet Pakistani interlocutors in track 2, some of them retired generals, they have a far more, I would say, positive kind of representation, interpretation of the internal dynamic. And this small constituency says that within Pakistan now, the sense is that we have had enough and the state needs to really reorient, particularly as far as these groups are concerned. And this weekly violence that we see, whether it is targeting the Shias or otherwise. So do you see any, again, as I said, opening there, or is it a just complete bleakness ahead?
No, in fact, I do see certain opening. An odd sort of metamorphosis is going on in Pakistan at present about this issue of continuing to support the asymmetric option of non-state actors. There is a view and introspection within, not only in civil society, but also in the senior echelons of the army, that how to bring into the overall political mainstream elements like the Lashkar-e-Toiba without causing a social upheaval. And to do this, it's going to be very careful. That is why they have hesitated to go for full-fledged anti-terror operations inside Punjab. And that is why they are so sensitive about this type of leakage of information that the civilians are accusing the army of not doing enough in this regard. So this is an evolving situation. After the new chief takes over, I would foresee certain changes in the administrative hierarchies. The new chief would like to get his own DGISI. The DGISI currently, Rizwan Akhtar, he is very well placed for the next succession, but he would have to do a core command. So there is a possibility that he may go into a core command and somebody new may come in as the DGISI. Apart from that, the generals in the Pakistan army would want a quid pro quo of de-escalation from India. They don't get or they don't see anything coming from the current Modi dispensation. So that again is a factor.
And you know, every time you talk to the Pakistanis, after a certain point, it sort of comes back to Kashmir. And they insist on saying that we want movement there. But before we get there, Ashok, I want to introduce one more aspect here. One is, let me sort of again bring to the table what I see as a glimmer of a positive development within Pakistan in relation to Islam. Meaning, today, for instance, I was quite, in a way, positively struck by the fact that the judiciary in Pakistan has finally taken a call and they have actually upheld the conviction. And the Christian couple, if you remember, they have actually sent the perpetrator to the gallows, which is quite, I would say, in the current climb of Pakistan, unusual. But I want to request you to reflect on a new determinant, which is the United States, its policies towards Pakistan, particularly when President Trump gets into the White House in January of next year. How do you see the US-Pakistan relationship playing out? What does that mean for India?
If we go by the campaign trail, I think Mr. Trump has quite openly criticized this Islamic radicalism, and he has said that US will act against it. But if we go by US behavior towards Pakistan, and especially the way American establishment has related to the Afghan issue, I see no reason to hope that Trump will radically alter American policy towards Pakistan. There may be some effort to curb Islamic radicalism in that space, but I don't see any reason to hope that they will radically alter the situation in Pakistan, because Pakistan is moving in a certain direction at the moment which might worry Trump and might worry the establishment as well. But looking at their past behavior, they will still hold Pakistan as an ally
And
in that
on
region.
a couple of critical issues, the first signs from the Trump camp are that he will perhaps go back to existing policy. But Prakash, what do you feel about US policy to Pakistan?
So the National Security Advisor, which has been picked up, Michael Flynn, last year he'd gone on record and publicly said that the rise of ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra was a conscious decision of the US. And definitely Trump is anti-Islamic terrorism. But I don't see much of a change which is going to happen in case of Pakistan. Maybe the aid will reduce, and if that reduces, will China step in? Like they already given them 3 attack helicopters, etc., etc. So Pakistan is actually in a very happy situation even today, even if the economy is going down. Now, when we come to this business of, they going in for anti-terrorist operation, Pakistan, the question is, where are they going? They are going into Fatah and SWAT. They are doing nothing. In fact, they are instigating the terrorists which are attacking India and helping them out. So as far as we are concerned, it doesn't make much of a difference. And as far as radicalization is concerned, it is institutionalized in Pakistan. It is the non-Sunnis which are being killed. Even the operation they are carrying out in Afghanistan, they are deliberately targeting the Hazaras so that there is an ethnic divide in Afghanistan.
Now, on this, do you see any possibility that this ethnic divide that we talk about, where the non-Sunnis are being targeted, particularly the Shias, I've always had this query, how does that play out within the Pakistani Fauj, meaning in the army itself? I'm sure there must be a certain amount of non-Sunni representation. What is your sense of that? Because this has always intrigued me.
If you take the Baluch regiments, 99% of the officers are non-Baluchis, right? And as far as Gilgit-Baltistan is concerned, the Northern Light Infantry, which actually suffered the most in conflict, what they've done is they've regularized them as part of the army. So they are getting the benefit where the army is actually the ruler. In fact, this chap, I think Bajwa, General Ishfaq Nadeem Ahmad is actually from the Azad Kashmir Rifles. And he possibly may become the chief because of his operational experience. Whereas Zubair Hayat may become the chairman JCS. Nadeem Ahmad has served as a brigadier in Waziristan. As a Major General, he served in SWAT. He was the DGMO when the blueprint was worked out for Zarb-e-Azam. He is the chap who briefed Nawaz Sharif and got it approved.
So on that, Rana, what is your sense? Like we often talk about the Islamization of the Pakistani military. If you remember General Musharraf, when the assassination attempt was also spearheaded by that small group that ostensibly felt that he was in a way deviating from the true path.
Well, 2 questions. One, the Shias. Now, there is some trickle of upward promotion of Shias into the higher echelons of the government. Earlier, there was an unsaid sort of convention that no Shias would be promoted beyond brigadiers. But this is not now a conscious policy, and 1 or 2 very bright and competent, professionally competent Shias have become generals. Coming back to the issue of Islamic penetration within the army, that is a very serious problem, and the top leadership always remains very sensitive and careful, at least in their promotion policy, about screening and weeding out such elements. The last serious attempt in the army had been the Hizb ut-Tahrir coup attempt by Brigadier Ali Khan. Now, that was squashed, but recently he has been released. So the Pakistan Army follows a carrot and stick sort of a policy, sometimes hard, sometimes soft. At the moment, this thing is in control, but there is more penetration of Islamic radicalism within the Navy and the Air Force than in the Army.
That's exactly the point I was saying, that we've spoken so much about the Pakistani Army, but as a sailor, I said, let's also look at the Pakistan Navy, which incidentally, as services go, apparently, as I've read in the media, and Pakistan has a higher level of this empathy as far as the Islamic orientation. But as I said, this is a complex issue. The trajectory of the Pakistani Fauj and the army in particular may be described as a uniquely tainted case where the institution, the military, has subsumed both state and society and is on top of the internal power structure within the country. Yet it faces many contradictions and paradoxes. On one hand, it has a self-image of being a highly professional army, but the genocide it endorsed and supported in the erstwhile East Pakistan and now Balochistan is the proverbial stain a la Lady Macbeth. In the Zia decade, the Pakistani army became the defender not just of the state and its territoriality, but that of the Islamic faith, filtered through the Saudi Wahhabi politico-religious orientation. And today, the sectarian religious fervor that was cynically stoked has become a monster that is feeding on its own entrails. Many in Pakistan aver that this was the Faustian bargain that has led to the current internal dissonance and the unending spiral of jihadi violence and bloodshed. Can a new Pakistani army chief redress the internal situation and contribute to a stabilization in bilateral relations, not just with India, but Afghanistan also? Much will depend on how Rawalpindi's principal external benefactors relate to the new dispensation in Pakistan, these interlocutors being the United States, China, and Saudi Arabia. By next week, there will be greater clarity, but for now, all eyes will be on the line of control and the manner in which the last few days of General Rahil Sharif's tenure will unfold. On that note, let me thank my guests, Mr. Banerji, Dr. Behuria, and General Katoch. And thank you for watching Security Scan. Goodbye.